How did the standard procedure of the heel calling the match come to be? Where did it originate? And what is the reasoning behind it?
I mean, scholars, J. Michael Kenyon and Matt Farmer and Dr. Mike Lano and all kinds of historians could debate the origins of something like that. It was traditional in a lot of cases. For one thing, it's harder to be the heel. It's harder because the heel in the days of pioneer wrestling, the Wild Bill Longsons of the world and beyond, the Strangler Lewis when he had to be nasty, or Toots Mondt and the Carnivals or whatever, the psychology of the whole thing kind of revolved around them. They were the guys that the comers had to meet and beat at the carnival to get the money, or they were the guys that the hometown hero could vanquish to win a lot of money on the side or just sell a lot of tickets. They were generally the more experienced at a main event level, because you can take a football hero like a Gus Sonnenberg or whatever, and you just translate his football success into people want to like this guy, and then put him against some hot heel, right? Or some guy that was an old hand that knew what to do, and lead him through it by the nose and get to people's response. So maybe it just evolved that way. But generally, the heel is also, because the heel in a lot of cases is one doing the favors, especially at the end of the program. So he had a little bit more control of how he was portrayed, or what his aura to the people was throughout the program, since he was calling a fucking match. But if the babyface was really figured into the territory, or one of the owners, and he didn't like the way the heel called a match, he'd either overrule him or get a new heel. So it wasn't a hard and fast rule. What could you add to this, oh great Brian Last?
Well, actually, I'm curious. What happens? Have you ever run into a scenario where both guys want to call the match and they're not on the same page? What do you do in that situation?
I've run into a situation a lot more where baby faces would just start calling shit, either because they got bored or frustrated or just lost, than actually any problem agreeing who was going to call a match. Yeah, and plus, while I was with the Midnight Express all those years, I was not sitting in a closed room. If there was a disagreement between Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes about the finish of their match, they were not going to be discussing it in the goddamn locker room with the boy. They'd be in a room somewhere. The Midnight and I never had any problem, except when you would, and the Von Erichs did this. They didn't necessarily do this out of maliciousness. They just, as Dennis would say, they were kind of buck wild, and they would do stuff when they felt it, right? And it was, you never knew sometimes when it was coming, but that led to their aura of being these wild, unpredictable boys. They were drawing money. So it's not like there was a fist fight over it. In some cases, I remember one time, Ernie Ladd and, I think it was Ernie. I had Ernie Ladd and Hercules Hernandez against Hacksaw Duggan and somebody I shall not name right now to embarrass, but Ernie Ladd had to hold this baby face in the corner and just, because Ernie was so big, he muscled the guy back in the corner and turned his back and flattened his back on him and grabbed the top ropes. And he looked over his shoulder. He said, "Now we're going to stay here until you start listening to me. And when you start listening to me, we're going to finish the match." Because he had just gotten carried away and been hyper and doing shit that, or not listening or whatever. It's a great story. It kind of fits this. This kid in Knoxville one time was working. It was Frank Morrell, the Angel, and Jerry Novak, the Bounty Hunter, with me at ringside in Knoxville in the summer of '83 in front of 422, enthralled fans. They were building Angel and Bounty Hunter up for a tag title match with Fantastic Ones. So this was their first appearance in Knoxville. They're on the underneath of the card, beating two local guys. I believe one of them may have been Pat Rose, and he was great. Pat could work his ass off. But then the poor other guy tags in to get beat, to make the comeback and get beat. And he starts flying in and he starts punching Frank Morrell, and Frank backs up to the ropes on the other side of the ring from me. And I'm down there looking, and the kid's punching Frank in the face, and Frank is selling him. But in between selling him, you can see his mouth move, his lips moving. He's trying to tell the kid something, and the kid keeps punching. And now he's got up like 7 or 8 punches as Frank is just laying on the ropes getting punched. And finally I I said backdrop, God damn it. He'd been telling the kid, shoot me off and give me a backdrop. But the kid was so excited making a comeback in front of this big crowd that he couldn't hear. And so the whole fucking empty building, I said backdrop, God damn it. And the kid shoots him off. Frank takes a big backdrop and turns around and catches him with the claw. And down they went. And that was one tackle pancake. That was the fucking finish right there.
Well, I think that answers that question in many different forms. Those buck wild knees that Kevin Von Erich used to run across the ring and hit people with.
Oh, Jesus. You never knew what you had to keep your eye on it. I was keeping my eyes on them on the few times we got to work with them. That's one of the reasons we quit. I would keep my eyes on them as close as I would the fans, because you never knew where it was coming from.